On this video, we're talking more about deduplication. Yes, I know deduplication, it's a never-ending story. We're always talking about deduplication, and I got more in this video. So I just finished watching a webinar called Is Deduplication Broken? And they brought up some interesting points that I want to summarize in my video. I also want to reflect on some of the things they said and disagree with some of them, believe it or not. So let's find a cozy spot by the library and talk about it. I am going to use my notes, if you don't mind, that I took down during the meeting. So a couple of interesting things that was said. One of the reasons why deduplication fails, we talked about it before, but here are a few other reasons that they brought up during the webinar. Office 365 migration. Believe it or not, data that's been migrated to Office 365 may not dedupe against data before migration. I guess there's some difference in the way it's stored or the way special characters are handled, but there is a difference. And if you collect from Office 365 and from Exchange, data may not dedupe properly. And then getting more data from Exchange, if you try to dedupe Exchange data versus data collected from somebody's phone, that will not work. Same applies going to different email clients, Gmail, Outlook, Lotus Notes. They will not dedupe well against each other either. Another interesting point they mentioned is some cases span over 10 years. And what happens during that time? Data migrates from one software to another. This is kind of what we talked about, but it was just an interesting way of describing it. You know, maybe one case started, there was in concordance, and then more data came about and somebody was put that data into law, and afterwards it got so big it wound up being relativity. So now you can no longer use relativity processing to dedupe against all the previous data. Now that's all well and good. Let's talk about where I disagree with them. One area I disagree with, they said something where users can control how to save their emails, whether to HTML, RTF, or text, and that will affect the duplication. That will not actually affect the duplication because user can choose how to store messages when they create a new message, not when they take somebody else's message. They don't actually resave it. If somebody sends you an HTML message, it'll stay as HTML. If they chose RTF, it will not be converted. So that should not affect the duplication. Next, pulling data from PST file. That also should not affect metadata and deduplication as long as it's done carefully. If you just take the individual messages, drag and drop them to a desktop, they should dedupe just fine. One of the recommendations they made was including message ID as one of the fields for deduplication. Now, I completely disagree with that. Message ID field has no actual standardization, and every application generates it however way they want to. So that field caused a lot of problems for me, so I recommend ignoring that field completely. And finally, deduping data between different time zones. If you are including dates and times in your deduplication criteria, you will get a mismatch. What they recommended is to not include time, but just include date. But that's going to cause a problem too, because date and time has to go together. And whenever time changes, it usually, well, if it's close to midnight, it'll roll over the date as well. So you're just going to wind up with weird situation in that case. Now let's talk about solutions. They did offer a few good solutions. One is to use email threading. That's always great because you will wind up with the most inclusive email at the end of email threading, and that's really the only email you need to read, code, and produce. Again, that's a little bit up to a debate, but that's pretty much the best thing you can do when reviewing and producing documents. Next thing they suggested is near duplicate detection, which is, again, really great thing to do. One of the file types they recommended that for is for scanned PDFs. You can do that, as well as for emails that don't dedupe properly. The important thing they pointed out is you don't want to just exclude documents based on being close together, based on near dupe algorithm. You want to sort of either sort them together or group them somehow and still review. And the last solution that was offered is metadata matching. That's where you take selective metadata fields from different documents and you compare them to each other to identify duplicates. However, they did not explain how to actually do it, so they didn't provide any real solutions in that case. I'm guessing it was more like an advertisement for their firm. Is like, well, that's what we can do. So let me tell you how I would do metadata matching. Now, this may be a little salesy, but you would do metadata matching using tools that I wrote, and those are the paid tools, so I want to let you know that ahead of time. And the tool I'm talking about is Batch Guru. Right, so I have a tool that works inside relativity and can do a number of things. So here's what I would do. First, I would use one of the tools in Batch Guru called Text Cleaner. that tool uses regular expressions to remove special characters or any weird characters or any numbers, letters that you don't want from a text field. So what you can do is take a body field, take all the triangular brackets or whatever you don't want and put them into another field that's going to be completely clean. Once you get that done, you'll need to figure out what fields do you want to use for deduplication. So from, to, CC, BCC, and so on. And you want to add the tool list and use a tool called MD5 hash generator. And that tool will generate a hash value based on the fields you select, which is exactly what processing engine would do. And once you get your hash values generated, you can run relativity script that will identify duplicates. It'll recreate duplicate custodian fields as well as duplicate paths. That's something people asked. Okay, this is Nikolai from the future. Just want to jump in here real quick because I forgot to mention something. Batch Guru does have a tool that does date time conversion from one time zone to another. So like the example I talked about earlier where data was processed in different time zones and couldn't be deduped by using metadata matching, well, if you use Batch Guru and convert that date time column to match, you can use metadata matching to dedupe against two data sets. All right, back to present Nikolai to close out this video. So are we ever gonna stop talking about deduplication on this channel? Well, my guess is not, because that is a topic that's never gonna be over, and there are gonna be text messages, and there are gonna be all kinds of data types that will require deduplication, and new solutions will need to be found for those as well. So until next time, we talk about deduplication.